Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new Mattel Jurassic World Rebirth release. We've got another of the Strike Attacks Wave 2. This is the Nanotyrannus, and talk about a random figure from Mattel. Was not in any way, shape, or form expecting a Nanotyrannus out of them, and I know there is still... some people will absolutely definitively tell you that Nanotyrannus is not a valid species. Other people will say, yes, it absolutely is. Other people will say, I'm not entirely sure. So, I don't know, it is what it is. If you don't want to look at this as actually being a Nanotyrannus, you can look at it as being like a juvenile Tyrannosaurus. It's really your call, I guess, as far as how you want to interpret this figure. But what I can tell you is it does look like a fairly decent looking figure, just really big bulky arms. But the packaging looks pretty much as it usually does, and then here on the back you can see a shot of the figure, and then down here an image showing off all of the other figures in this wave, all of which we have now reviewed on the channel, except for the Zuniceratops, which will be up very soon. So let's pop this box open and check it out. So here is our Nanotyrannus figure. Let's reposition the arms and legs and everything and make it look a little bit better. And again, it looks fairly decent for what it is. I actually quite like the color scheme that they've chosen for this one. I think that's at least a plus. And they haven't gone super crazy as far as the design goes. Sometimes Mattel will kind of go a little bit crazy when it comes to artistic liberties with different dinosaurs, but not so bad when it comes to the Nanotyrannus. Starting here in the head sculpt, you can see it looks fairly decent. We've got some okay looking skin texture throughout, a good bit of variation, of course. You can also see some bumpier kind of scales, almost like small ridges moving up and over the top of the head here on both sides. We have the nostrils sculpted out, as well as the eyes sculpted out, but unfortunately no pupil as far as like a black pupil goes. We just have the blue, which is basically like the primary body color of the head right there for the pupil, which doesn't look all that great. But one thing that does look pretty nice are the teeth. I think the teeth definitely have a better, sharper look to them. They're of course not picture perfect, but much better than what we would have seen on a lot of older figures. We do as well, of course, have an articulated jaw, which I'm going to go ahead and say is part of the action feature. Looks like, yep, we're going to push it over here, and then it's going to have a strike attack. So inside the mouth, we can see the teeth again on the lower jaw. We can also see the tongue, which is sculpted nicely, painted with a pinkish tone. No coloration there on the inside of the mouth on the upper side, unfortunately. But again, the teeth are all painted with a light yellowish tone, and I think they look pretty decent for what they are. Fairly large and kind of bulky, but they don't look half bad, at least as far as like being curved and awkward looking. We do have a lighter tone for the lower jaw. We can see a cluster of like larger scales there before we move out into a little bit of a finer skin texture through that lower jaw. Also, we do have a little sloppiness to the paintwork of the teeth on the upper side, which I now noticed, and that's been pretty common actually with this entire wave of strike attacks. A lot of the time Mattel doesn't usually have sloppiness in the teeth anymore, but it looks like maybe we're heading back in that direction because a lot of the teeth have been pretty sloppy this time around. But again, up here in the neck, we do have that lighter tone that leads down and then disappears in the throat area. Again, it looks okay for what it is. As we move up here to the top of the head, my camera again loses focus. You can see again that we've got some osteoderms and stuff leading down. We also have a seam right here that moves back through the neck where the head was connected. Some fairly decent looking kind of bumpier scales that again my camera's refusing to focus on. There we go. The detail again moving down the neck I think looks quite nice. We also have some more osteoderms leading all the way down to the bottom of the neck before we very abruptly transition to a dark blue, but that's because it's kind of meant to look like the lighter blue kind of breaks up here as you lead back into the body, which again does look pretty decent, but unfortunately past that point we then don't really have any paintwork, which does look a little bit, unpainted past that, hip region, which is again pretty common for Mattel. But as you lead down, you've got some okay looking skin texture, again kind of like larger rough and rugged scales, I would say, as you lead down here into the arms. The arms though again are huge and they look very, very impressive, like he's been hitting the gym, but they also kind of look a little swollen when you move down into the hands, like he's having an allergic reaction to a bee sting. But overall, we've got some muscle definition. We can also see some scoots down the fingers. Again, it all looks pretty decent, and we do have a little bit of a sharper look to the claws. No paintwork for the claws, but since the body is a dark blue, it doesn't stand out as much that we don't have paintwork, but obviously we have arm articulation forward and back, not out away from the body, but like I said, it's very flexible, definitely a rubber, so it is pretty, movable overall, and the wrists are placed correctly, which is also nice. As we move back into the stomach, you can kind of make out the rib cage a little bit. Obviously, we have leg articulation, which you can see. I've moved it to try to take a look at the stomach. Moving up here to the top, you have, again, some more decent-looking skin texture, fairly vibrant scales leading along. We also have the spinal column up there on the back of the dino. Moving down, we have some muscle definition in the thigh. Again, some decent-looking skin texture, which is quite vibrant as you lead down. You've got the kneecap there in the front of the leg, the calf muscle in the back, and then as we move down, actually, the FACSAP code randomly is peeling off on the underside, but as you move down, you can see again the ankle is sculpted out pretty decently, and then we've got some scoots down the toes, kind of clunky scoots, not like traditional scoots we usually see on Mattel Tyrannosaur feet. But then you also have the claws, which are sculpted nicely, but just unpainted. And yes, we do even have dew claws over there you can see on the other foot. As we lead back up here into the tail, you've got a few skin wrinkles here leading from the thigh up into the tail. You've also got a few more osteoderms as you lead out into the tail, which does have a fairly decent looking curve to it. It also looks like we've got maybe... No, it kind of looked like we had an area of articulation right there, but unfortunately we do not. We definitely have a spot right here, which obviously can go left and right. It does not go up and down, just left and right. Actually, it doesn't even go left and right, it just goes right. It doesn't go left at all, only to the right, and because of that, you use it to create this, again, action attack where the dinosaur turns its head and strikes over here, which is basically the, again, strike attack aspect of the Nanotyrannus, which is okay, I guess. And then when you turn it around and you take a look at the opposing side, it's going to look pretty much the same, with the only real difference being the fact that the leg is trailing over here compared to leading on the other side. But overall, again, for what it is, it's all right, but it's definitely not anything that is going to, in my opinion, cause people to go crazy over it. I can't see this being a super, highly wanted figure. But for a length, you were looking at about 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters. And then for a height, a little bit under 3¼ inches. I would actually say closer to 3 inches or about 8 centimeters, pretty much on the dot. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Mattel Nanotyrannus. And you can see again, the figure is pretty much exactly where you would expect it to be in the Strike Attack size range. It doesn't stray too far from pretty much any other figure of this type. So for another comparison to further show you that, we've got ourselves the Nanotyrannus next to a Mattel Velociraptor, and you can very clearly see that, again, they are in a very similar size range, very different as far as like the proportions. The Nanotyrannus is a lot bulkier, but they're very similar in the overall size. And you'll of course see pretty much the same thing if I bring in a random standard Dilophosaurus from Mattel. Again, pretty close to the same size here. Then we've also got the Achillobator from the newest wave of Strike Attacks, which you can see is also roughly in the same similar size range. And then finally the new Herrerasaurus, which seems to be just slightly smaller, at least as far as height goes, but still pretty similar in body mass. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Rebirth Nanotyrannus is kind of fun, but it's not really anything to go crazy over. It's not really anything that great. It doesn't even have like a super striking color scheme to draw you in. It's just kind of a generic sculpt with really big bulky arms that I'm not a big fan of, like how thick the arms look. It is still kind of fun for what it is. Sculpt-wise, it does have some very nice, very fine detail, really impressive skin texture moving through. I don't think you'll ever at this point find a Mattel sculpt that doesn't have good detail to it. They usually always do, and very impressive fine detail, and you absolutely have the same thing going on for this one. It does have much better looking teeth than a lot of the older Strike Attacks had. They kind of have a sharper look, which is also a plus. The figure does also have some okay paintwork, but but again, it's not really that great, fairly lackluster, but it's, you know, okay for what it is. It doesn't, unfortunately, of course, have painted nails, but at this point, that's pretty much just like beating a dead horse, repeating that all the time, because none of these figures, especially Strike Attacks, these very rarely have painted claws. It's only if you're like a Velociraptor that you sometimes get that treatment, and even that's rare nowadays. But the figure does also have some articulation and a fairly okay action feature. So if you are interested in this, you can purchase this in store at Target, or you can check online, because it does seem to pop up on the website and then disappear pretty much like 1 or 2 every day, it seems like. I somehow have like seen this on there repeatedly at least 3 to 4 times now, and I already had it, so I didn't order it again, but it does seem to pop up and then quickly disappear. So if you're quick enough, you can grab it online. Otherwise, again, check in store. I will include a link in the description, though, to the listing on Target's website if you'd like to, favorite that and wait for it to be restocked. But one way or another, it's kind of fun, so pick it up if you want it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.